All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Lily Cloud, and we're glad that you have joined us today for the Big Picture Digital Delivery at NCDOT. So today we're going to have Matt Clark, NCDOT Technical Services Director, Jennifer Evans, NCDOT Technical Services Deputy Director, Troy Brooks, NCDOT State Construction Engineer, Giles Harrell, NCDOT State Maintenance Engineer, Vaseem Barodawala, CAD Integration Lead, and Andrew Pozich with RS&H. So before we dive in, just a couple of quick reminders. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, and also a QR code to sign in for PDHs that's going to be shown on the on the screen at the end of this session. And there's also a paper QR code here as well. So without further delay, let's get started.
Thank you, Lily. I don't know what happened, Andrew. I mean, I thought there would be people lined up in the hallway trying to get in here after the opening session. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank y'all for being here and for actually abiding by the clock and by the time we get started and go just a little level deeper in this session from where the opening session was, and then this afternoon go even deeper, a place that you probably won't see me at. It'll probably be too deep for me to breathe, but I'll just be honest with you. I want to kick us off and just share just a couple of slides and a couple of thoughts on the department's vision and goals. And if you were at the pre-construction workshop 6 months ago, we began to introduce this, but want to share in a little more detail. I'll first say that Jennifer and I joke around, well, it's more than joke, we're serious, that it seems like every week we learn something else and things that everybody else already knows. It's like, I don't feel like we can get a good solid basis because there's so much information, so much that's already been done, and so many things that need to be considered as we think about digital delivery. And so I hope that everybody doesn't feel exactly like we do. This is a challenging topic. It's challenging, and it really, I believe, is kind of revolutionary. I believe this is one of those changes that many of us only see once in a career. It's that type of change. As we look at digital delivery, the definition that NCDOT has put forth, and if you look at FHWA, look at other states, you'll all see that these are very similar, but we're using the definition of the use and transfer of digital data in pre-construction, construction, and asset management. Very purposeful in bringing out those specific phases of transportation projects. And then also the purpose of digital delivery is to deliver data in a directly consumable format to maximize the benefits of the information for decision making and program delivery. I will say that, of course, we often speak of data, but the reason to do this is not for data purposes. There are many advantages to using the data, but ultimately, what is going to help us deliver projects better, more efficiently, quicker? That's what our ultimate focus is. There are many secondary benefits, and many of them are attached to the data. The final thing that I'd like to just quickly go over is some short-term goals, intermediate goals, and long-term goals. I won't read these. They're on the screen, but as we look at short-term goals, these are things that we hope to accomplish this year. As we developed these toward the end of last year, these are like the short-term goals are 12-month goals. We're making good headway on these already. The intermediate is looking out in the next 2 to 3 years. What does it take to have pilot projects moving into projects where we have a 3D model? And I think we're well on our way. We're going to be able to reach this goal before this 3-year mark on many projects. And then finally, for the long term, looking at 5+ years, what does it take to fully integrate and have this digital delivery? The goals are purposefully high level. Jennifer, Troy, and Giles, they're going to share more information. Andrew will as well, and more detail as to what the three subgroups desire to accomplish with pre-construction, construction, and asset management. I mentioned this is a large task, and I'll be honest with you, it's going to take a lot longer than I wish it would. I don't like things that drag out for years, and probably drag out isn't the best word. I don't leave you with that connotation, but I like to tackle something, accomplish it, check it off in a year or two, something like this, but it's just not going to be that possible. Like I mentioned, this kind of a generational change for us. And so it's going to take some time. We're going to have to be patient, but also be very proactive in what we want to accomplish. For me, some examples of some major marks of success are pre-construction producing a model, just say a grading model, that contractors begin to trust and that they would begin to utilize as we look to construct projects. I don't think, as was mentioned, we're not looking to publish simply a model and expect a project to be built from it. But as we move toward that, I think that's a mark of success. As we look at construction, I think that we see that inspections, they are and will continue to change as to how we use technology in inspections as we move forward. And then with digital as-built, how are we providing information from construction to asset management so that we can keep the records that we need as an organization. We use this, we throw this around as kind of a mark of pride, but the second largest transportation system in the nation, and so we need to do things well as it comes to asset management. If you're interested, I know Emily McGraw, she gave some presentations to the Board of Transportation just earlier this month with the number, with quantifiable assets that the department has. I mean, it is unreal as to the type of things we have, pipes, all the type of infrastructure. And so the things that we do in pre-construction and construction need to truly support asset management. In many ways, this is an opportunity as we look at digital delivery to develop a new way to plan, design, construct, and maintain our transportation infrastructure. In all this, I hope that each of us will accept this as a challenge to consider the way that we do things now and to think about how we could do things in the future. Software is changing. It's amazing as to how quickly things are changing in a world that has been pretty stagnant for a long time as we look at civil engineering. But we need to embrace this with the capabilities that we have. And hopefully we'll be more efficient. And I fully expect that as we change, that we're going to realize benefits that we don't even know that we think we will. So I'm expectant toward that. Next few years, I'm excited. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So with that, Jennifer.
All right, so I'm going to do my best to not be redundant with what Matt said. However, as we think about the high-level goals that he discussed and then how we roll them into pre-construction, there is some level of redundancy. The pre-construction working group that we've put together for DOT includes all of our design disciplines. So you can go through the list in your head. But we also have members from our highway division. We have PEF partners. And then, of course, we have our asset management and our construction partners so that as we're thinking about pre-construction activities, we're not just solely focused on a single discipline, or pre-construction, we're thinking about designing with the end in mind. So as I think about this pre-construction working group that we've put together, I just wanted to kind of lay out some of the roles so we all understand that this group is looking to provide an overall vision and leadership. So a lot of you may have been involved in some kind of work group. There's a lot of different initiatives across the department to try to help move this initiative forward. And so if we don't have an overall vision and leadership from a pre-construction perspective, then we might not all be working in the same direction. So we're really trying to lay out an overall vision for where we go, and then really trying to focus in on those critical issues. And as Matt said, we do learn something new, it seems like, every week. And oftentimes it's not good news, it's bad news. And so we're trying to figure out how we move forward, and the opportunities are abundant. And so determining those critical issues and identifying them, and then really using that group to try to start to develop recommendations and strategies. Because the last thing that we want are project teams, delivery teams, and any team that we work on, we don't want them to just bring problems. We want them to start to bring solutions. And so really working as a group to try to develop recommendations and strategies, and then using that executive leadership group that we've put in place to elevate key issues and challenges. So you're going to see a lot of integration on this screen, and I hate to be redundant with integration, but if we do not focus on integration, and when I say integration, I mean across disciplines, we have different plan sets. And so thinking about how we integrate, and we use technology to help us look across the disciplines and the plan sets, and then also across phases. And so again, thinking about pre-construction to construction, pre-construction to asset management, that's the way that we're going to ensure that we have full advantage of the model technology, and that we maximize our efficiencies, that we help this technology to, that we use this technology to help us communicate with intention. And everything that we're looking at to do right now, we're setting the framework for the future. So pre-construction efforts, as I see it, are really focusing on providing and establishing what is required for quality designs. And Andrew touched on that, this morning. And then the automated machine guidance that Matt just mentioned, we're looking to model that on projects. And so he touched on working to establish trust. And so what does that mean, and how long does that take? I don't know. But we are only as good as our products are accepted. And so there is going to be a time frame where we're producing models, whether it's machine guidance models or it's more detailed models for design, but the contracting industry may not be ready to accept those. So we really have to put ourselves in a place where we're working to establish trust, and good design quality is the way we do that. And then so a first step that we're looking at in that is to provide that AMG as a contractual deliverable, not a model as a legal document, and maybe not even as you're going to build off of this, but just a contractual deliverable of, we're going to give this to you, and at a minimum we need you to provide feedback. So on the next few slides, I'm going to go through the pre-construction working group goals that we've established. We set these goals in place to start implementation in 2025. That does not equal they are fully implemented. That does not equal we're done with them. But this is where we've set our sights for 2025. But all of these goals we need to be mindful of everything we're doing for 2025 needs to set us up for our future. So goal number one that I've laid out here is to define the model. And I have components, formats, level of effort, level of detail, with a focus on integration. And so when I think of this goal, it's really, and Chris Smitherman and I were just talking at the break about spot safety projects. And so does the spot safety project need the same level of effort of modeling as a large TIP project? I don't know, but we need to start to put some parameters in place of what makes sense from a design perspective, how much modeling we need to do quality designs, how much modeling will actually be utilized, and then put together guidance. And I feel like when we get that in place, it will be helpful for PEFs, it will be helpful for DOT, and it will start to give us a language. I see a time where we're almost in a scoping meeting and we scope through what the project entails, and then we say, okay, what's our level of modeling on this? So it's an additional component that we'll put into a scope of work to establish up front what our expectations are for designers. And then that helps us to do better with our mandate estimating efforts as well. So again, that's not fully implemented in 2025. That's just where we need to go, and we need to build this guidance. So goal number 2 is to develop process and workflow mapping with focus on integration. And this goal includes mapping existing software and identifying future software needs, which will lead to expansion of naming and version guidance. That is a lot. But I think the thing that has been overwhelmingly apparent is there is a lot of softwares involved in this. And that equals a lot of softwares that we have to evaluate if they're still working for us, if they'll still work in new technology, if they need to be replaced, what does that look like? And we have to ensure that as we're building this digital delivery software, that our tools are talking to each other. And a lot of times I say, I feel like I work for my tools do not work for me. And so we need to make sure that we have tools that are put together in a way that they talk with each other and they work to help us do our job. And so mapping out what we have and then projecting where we want to go is the first step in that. And then leading to the expansion of naming and version guidance. I would say in general, our document control and our naming, our file naming, I think we used to be really, really good at that, and we maybe got a little bit sloppy with that, and it hurts us. And I say that in the nicest way possible, but like as we move into new technology, we need to be very mindful about how we name things. And we can all work together right now to start to set the foundation for where we store things and how we name things so that we build a better future for us. Goal number 3 is to update the QA/QC and plan checking guidance practices pertaining to the model with focus on integration. And this goal will develop will include a development of a QA/QC process for the model. And so for those of you that are using our QA/QC checklists, like we've done a really good job of implementing and putting in these checklists for deliverables, 2D deliverables, plan deliverables. And so what does it look like when we introduce a model into this? And so as you think about it, it opens a whole nother piece of a project that needs to be QA/QC'd, and it needs to be checked. And that might not be something that traditional designers and sure not project managers are comfortable with. And so we have to be very careful in setting up a QA/QC and plan checking process that will support not only the 2D deliverables that we produce and evolve in time, but that we have something in place to ensure that that model we're delivering has been checked. So goal number 4 is identification and delivery of pilot projects, providing the AMG for information only in 2025 with a focus on integration. This will help us to determine how we produce, utilize, and get feedback from contractors. And we're looking to just add verbiage in the contract. And so again, it might just be as simple as, here's the model, you don't have to work off of it, but at a minimum, we need you to look at it and give us feedback so that we can start to really figure out what we're doing right and what they need different and where we can evolve to better support that, build that trust and support their usage, which is ultimately where we all want to be. Goal number 5 is the further development of sample plan sets. And so I don't know if everybody is even aware that we have put some sample plan sets out on the web, if you can find it, to reference what an ORD and open roads plan set might look like. And so this was something that the industry was asking for, and we used the projects that we had to provide some examples, but we need to think of this as a living document. And as we develop and as we progress with how we use this technology, we need to be able to keep that plan set up to date. And right now, I think it's kind of pieced together from different project examples. And so a goal would to be an inclusive standard plan set per discipline that is a living document that evolves and really provides a good example of what we can expect standard deliverables to look like. And then from that, we're probably going to need to go to some training, not only on what plans look like, how to QA/QC, there's how to actually produce all of these things that we're talking about. But so goal number 6 is to really define, develop, and provide training with a focus on integration. And I think overall, we've done a really good job of doing training with the resources that we have, but it's a great time to really think and be intentional about kicking our training focus to the next level. And so I think with that ends the pre-construction. I'm going to turn it over to Troy, and he's going to talk about the construction work group.
All right, thank you, Jennifer and Lily, for the introduction. I think Jennifer really laid the groundwork for the mission, and certainly Matt did as well, for how we're getting our arms wrapped around this digital delivery piece. And I think Andrew's presentation this morning was also very enlightening, that it's not just about the model, right? And I think we found that in our work group, is that it's about data that's digital in nature, and then leveraging that to help us more efficiently deliver our projects. So that's a little bit what I want to talk about. So certainly our work group, right, we're steering and elevating strategies and decisions up, and the hope is that we get good resolutions out of that, and using that work group to kind of steer those conversations. I think prior to this initiative, we maybe struggled a little bit with that. Like construction, we were working on our own things and on our own pilot projects, and I think certainly the designers were maybe doing the same thing, and folks in asset management were doing something similar to meet their digital needs. And so I'm really excited that the past year we've taken a step back and tried to put this in perspective on trying to work together, some of that cross-pollination, really to improve project delivery. That's the name of the game. Save some money, get more projects on the street, and do that effectively. So our work group certainly is made up of central construction staff, myself, and others in my unit. We've got division construction staff, division construction engineers. We've got technical services design representatives sprinkled in there, location and surveys, and also leveraging some good relationships with our contracting partners. We've got several contractors that are a part of our work group, and as I present to you some of the goals, I think it'll be clear that we're really going to be able to leverage those to our benefit. So when we started busting out our goals for 2025, I think the model, right, is a big piece of that, and that ORD deliverable that's going to be flowing from pre-construction to construction. There's some ground to be gained there, and a lot of learning, right? And I think we've seen that in our initial discussions. We kind of get caught in that loop of, well, construction, y'all tell us what you need, and we're like, designers, y'all tell us what you're going to give us, and so we've kind of gone around and around, and so our goal number 1 really aligns with several of the goals in pre-construction, and so we want to work closely with them on piloting those projects, leveraging information from our contractors, and not just our contractors. In many cases, yes, you've got the big contractors, right? They're doing in-house modeling, they're doing all that stuff as part of their normal business practice. But a lot of the medium to smaller size contractors, when it comes to modeling and digesting information that we give them on the pre-construction side, they're leaning on contract surveyors. And so we want to hone in on that and try to get feedback and survey and help to guide what these deliverables are going to be. So our goal number 1, right, is that model component. And then, like Andrew talked about, that digital data and leveraging those in our current business practice, we looked at a lot of things that we're doing with drones and how do we increase efficiency there, and a lot of different technologies there, and pieces of digital data that we can capture during the construction project that'll hopefully flow into asset management one day. Goal number 3, it really aligns with asset management, and that's our as-built process. For years, we have redline PDFs and hard copy plans and scan those in and put them on somebody's hard drive on a computer, and maybe or maybe not it got printed out and put in a file somewhere, or made it to its final destination, and it was to be determined if that was going to be used in the future or not. So we got some low-hanging fruit there. In our construction group, we want to move the needle, and things that we're currently behind the 8 ball on, we want to try to go ahead and tackle those. So certainly our as-builts and streamlining the digital workflow of that is a goal of ours. E-ticketing, something we've worked closely with our industry partners on, really a safety initiative, as well as trying to eliminate human error when it comes to calculating asphalt quantities or storing project records Going to an e-ticketing solution is something that we've been working on for years, and it made sense to put that into our work group here for further discussion and further advancement as we look to go beyond just an optional provision with asphalt, expanding that to aggregate and concrete. Very similar to what Jennifer talked about, our final goal is training and exposure. It's a lot of folks in the construction realm that live in how we traditionally have built projects 20 years ago, and that's traditional stakeout, that's hard copy plans, and so we've got a tall task ahead of us, and I think it starts with exposure and training. So, building a little bit, I won't spend a lot of time here because, again, I think Andrew painted this picture. When we think about digital delivery and construction, that 3D model comes to mind, and that's what we typically think about. Right now, just so that everybody's aware, they're taking our files that are developed, whether it's a DGN or whatever we'll give them at the time that a contract is awarded, and they're going out, their surveyors or their in-house model builders are going ahead and they're building the model, right? And so we think that there's information on how they build their models, the information that's critical to them, whether it's AMG or other items that help make them more efficient when they're constructing work, being able to have a two-way street and get some of that feedback so that hopefully they can utilize what we're providing to them in the future. Certainly software is a big thing. Our contractors, we don't limit them on what they can use and how they would digest this information, so that'll be a big challenge of our work group is understanding what the software needs are. All right, so we talked a little bit about the where we want to integrate with them, really pilot projects, and it's about getting feedback, right? That's where it starts, is solving the question of what they're going to give us and what we need to build the project. So right out of the gate, trying to go ahead and tackle that problem, get good industry feedback so that we can start marching down that path as a step one. And then it's about usability. I think one thing that's overwhelming to me when I first started talking with designers and ORD and the level of detail that was going into building some of these models is like the sky's the limit. We're planning on this utility being exactly at this elevation, and this cross line is going to be right here at this elevation, and that's hard for me to digest because a lot of times in construction that's not how it is. So is the level of effort, I think like Jennifer talked about, is that level of effort in the design, is that going to be usable in the model? I think certainly there's a benefit in design, but is that going to be usable in construction? And so I think honing in on the information that we pass downstream, that being usable. So again, contractor feedback is going to help us dial that in. I talked about drones. We've been using drones on our projects for many, many years. I'm sure many of you in the room, whether you're DOT or consultants, you're actively utilizing drone technology for either bridge inspections or site surveys. And we really want to just get our arms wrapped around that a little bit. I think all the divisions have pilots at this point. I think from a construction perspective, we think that there's an opportunity there from certainly a safety perspective on the inspection side of the house to maybe get to some precarious locations and better lay eyes on something and have better documentation for something without putting someone in harm's way. Again, taking out that human error. If the days of using a tape and a wheel to measure seed and emulsion surely seem dated when we've got a piece of technology that could accurately measure quantities, pay quantities for a contract. And so we want to explore that a little bit more with this initiative within our work group. Talked about as-built. We've made some really good progress with this initiative over the past year to 2 years, where we're capturing those as-builts, those markups that are currently PDFs, and at least being able to store them in a better location where they can be easily searched, found on a map, where you can just quickly go in and go to this grid and click on a project, and you can look at the archives of each as-built for that particular alignment. And so our IT partners have been very helpful with that, but we want to build on that. We want to continue to make them searchable. We want to continue to maybe utilize that digital information that's being presented in pre-construction, and maybe that's marking something up in a model that eventually goes to asset management. The goal here is that try not to create double work. Like when we construct a project and we know that pipes and other assets were installed during that construction project, asset management shouldn't have to go back behind us and survey and capture those assets into their system. So want to be able to streamline that process. Training and exposure. We've worked. We want to work closely with our location and surveys units. We've heard from the divisions and our consulting partners. Survey in general, we struggle with. That's kind of the dying breed, I'll say, is our surveyors, especially our in-house surveyors in our construction offices. Many of our folks now are leaning on consultants or third-party surveyors to do layout verification, maybe even verifying models if a contractor is using AMG. So we want to put an emphasis back with our location and surveys and our construction unit staff to provide some updated training to the divisions and their resident engineer survey parties. That'll come hand in hand with updating our construction layout manual right now, which really just has a paragraph or two in there about AMG and GPS and UAS. So certainly some increases and fluffing up our training and our guidelines. And lastly, I think the exposure piece when it comes to models, it's a very nebulous thing for our construction staff. They don't know what to picture and what that means for them in inspection. And so I think starting to show them, whether it's that model viewer tool in the field where because everybody's got an iPad when they're inspecting projects. Well, now you can take a deeper dive, and it's not just flipping from a 2D plan set into a cross section. There's some ground to be gained there, and being able to expose our inspection staff to that. So that's what I've got for construction, and hopefully that lays the foundation. And hand that over to Giles, and we'll answer some questions after a while, it sounds like.
All right, I'm going to talk about our asset management group and the work that we've been doing. It's always hard to follow up Jennifer and Troy there, honestly. So, but just in the natural flow of things, pre-construction, construction, you got asset management next. How do we maintain our infrastructure? And so we're following right in line with the process. We also have multiple disciplines in our group and with staff from both central and field divisions. So we have folks that are well versed in asset management, as well as some folks that get a little bit more exposure to it, but providing very much valuable input as we work through what do we need. What does asset management's take need to be when it comes to digital delivery? We are the end users of the products that pre-construction and construction groups come up with, especially the models. So how does that integrate with our systems? What data do we need to be able to maintain our system that's coming out of the models and the products that they're producing out of their groups? We also have the long-term state in the consumption and use of our digital information, and maintaining our data systems also coincides with maintaining our physical assets that we have out there. Let's see. I'm going to touch on our goals, and then I'm going to dive deeper into them as we move on. But our main goals are identify and prioritize our data and our assets, identify how data and our assets are being collected and utilized, identify current software used in asset management across all business units, identify software integration and how systems are linked, establish recommended analysis periods for updates of our asset management software and platforms, and then define, develop, and provide communication with a focus on integration. I apologize, looks like we got a typo. The width has moved way out there from where it was intended, but anyway. And so we split our work up into 3 subgroups. We have a data subgroup that's focusing on the first 2 goals. We have a software subgroup that's focusing on the 3 goals centered around software, and then we have a communication group that is focusing on how do we focus on integration moving forward. And before a couple weeks ago, we called that our training subgroup, which coincides with what Jennifer and Troy were talking about. But we really looked at it more as we got to work with that subgroup. Started looking at it more as this is more really a communication thing for us. How do we talk about what we're doing? And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that here in just a second. So our data subgroup, we got to identify and prioritize our assets. We have a huge system out there, and we need to figure out what assets are are important and to track for operations, regulatory resilience, and future project planning. Like, we got to define what is important to us. It's great to have data, but what do we need is the biggest question around that. How are we sharing that data? How often are we updating it? And what are the characteristics that are currently tracked that provide a little value to the department? Do we have wasted resources in areas we need to refocus our attention in other places? We're also identifying how assets are being collected. We need to define how business units are collecting data across the board, and what processes are they using. If there is any opportunities to use the same resources, then we need to make sure we're communicating that and figuring out what those connections could be. An example that's been coming up the last couple of years is we're doing a mobile data collection for our pavement condition scores. How easy would it be to strap a LiDAR device and get some imagery and some LiDAR data as they're riding every route that we have out there? So there's opportunities for some of that to exist, and some of that data we might can capture may greatly benefit our business units across the board. So our data subgroup's looking into both of those areas for us. Our software subgroup is really focusing on what systems do we have for asset management across the board, and I would almost argue that every business unit within DOT has some interest in some way of asset management. Some of them may not know that's what it is, but they have an interest in maintaining some data set or something that we could argue is asset management to the department. So this group is exploring what technologies already exist and how are we maintaining and tracking our assets. They're also looking at recommended analysis periods and how often should we update it. So we got some systems that, I don't know, we've been using 15, 20 years. Have we asked ourselves the question, is this system still working for us? Is there a better product out there? Have we highly customized it to our needs where there's an off-the-shelf product that is readily available and updated on a regular basis that may suit our needs better? So we're challenging this group to really look at that and figuring out how often we are looking at these systems and then establishing some analysis periods for at least for us to ask the question, is it still working for us, even if we're not going to make the change? We also need to establish how our systems are linked. What's talking to each other? What is not? What are the gaps that in our data sets that we may need system integration on? And I know both Jennifer and Troy talked a lot about integration. This is really stepping down into how do our systems work together and communicate our data across the board. In our communication subgroup, we've challenged them to make sure they're out there getting the message out about what digital delivery is, and then how do we best consume that information? Is it a pamphlet or a flyer that we put out, or is it? There was a lot of, when I said it was originally named a training section, they were stuck on, okay, how often we're going to go sit in the classroom? Whoa, we're not. I don't even know that we need to sit in the classroom for this. This is how are we communicating our efforts and really focusing on that culture shift that Matt spoke on earlier, because this is a big deal in a way that we can really move forward in great leaps throughout the department. And then what are our keys to success as far as asset management group goes? Since we are somewhat lagging behind what the products that pre-construction and construction are producing, we need to keep sight of what they're doing and making sure that we're not going off on a tangent that isn't going to pick up the work that they're doing. I've reminded our folks, make sure they're cognizant of pace. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So this is a long process that we're going to be going through, and we don't need to try to eat the whole elephant at one time. Communicate's going to be a big deal. That we need to understand what the other groups are doing, as well as understand what our subgroups within asset management is working on, so that we're not stepping on each other's toes and we're all communicating the same message. And we need to be ready to adapt when necessary. If we have a big shift in the model products that are coming out, we need to be able to take that and accept it into the work that we're doing, and make sure that we're nimble as can be with the work that we're doing. So that's really all I got for asset management. Let's see, I think Vasim's next. Is that right? Vasim? Thank y'all.
Guys. My team was established. I'm with the CAD integration team, and so my team was established a year ago. So when we were talking about establishing this CAD integration team a year ago, one of the first questions that me and Matt and others were discussing is like, what do you want to call this group? And first word that came to my mind was integration. And then next thing I did was I asked Andrew, Andrew, I'm going to call my team CAD integration team. And Andrew's like, guess what I'm calling my team up there at RSNH? Like design integration team. So that word integration, I want to pause here and kind of reflect on that. A year from now, we're talking integration already. One of the doubts I had back then was calling my group CAD integration. Rather, I wanted to call it data integration. And that was my mindset. It was like it's more about data and not just CAD. So it's all encompassing of all this. And what I wanted to see here is like, what is digital delivery? And if I did a survey here, I bet I'll get probably exactly the same, probably different answers on each person's thinking in a different way what digital delivery means. If I ask my cousin, doctor, what the digital delivery means, he's probably going to say, well, you mean robots giving birth to baby robots? But if you ask somebody in IT, digital delivery, different digital transformation. If you ask us, it's a little different story. But basically, for us, as a first wave, is connecting the dots. That's basically where it all kind of comes to, is how do we integrate our data, our CAD, and our system that's existing right now into a process that can have that whole data cycle throughout the whole project life from beginning to the end, and then also cycle through it after the asset management. But since one thing I think missing on our construction industry is evolving. I think a lot of industry, if you see right now, have been evolving over the years. One example here, that picture there, I always think about my car. I work on my car a lot, and I like, I'm sure people here enjoy working on their cars. And first thing that comes to my mind is, right now I'm comfortable working on my car because it's a gas-powered car. I probably won't be as comfortable working on my car if it was all electric. There's so many sensors, so many wires. I probably need somebody with electronic knowledge to help me with that. And so same concept here for us. I think it's going to be evolving and learning these new technologies, new data, and how do you upgrade ourselves for this cycle. With that, I wanted to let you all know, like, this isn't something new. I mean, we've been doing this 3D models for a while. I remember this is Winston-Salem and Business 4D project. 2014, 2013 is when the design started in roadway design unit. This is the Google Earth image at present. This is 2014 when I was working as an engineer modeling this project as a preliminary estimate in roadway design unit pre-construction. This is what it looked like back then. And so even though this got design built and given, the model wasn't used for construction, But my point is, we had the capability back then. I think the drawback back then was we had that capability only in one discipline, in NCDOT roadway design unit, and so now it's more about integration. Similar concept, similar example here. This is Division 13 Bridge Project, 2014. Google Street View now, 2014 model back then. Here's where we are at present. One of the most famous site for 2024. Chimney Rock. We use a lot of our current technology, our LiDARs, our drones, to get an assessment of the damage, get an assessment of the design quickly to the contractors and the designers. We figured these things out pretty quickly this time around. And here's a detour that was built. Not obviously, again, not off of the model, but again, using the same technology. We progressed where we can do a quick assessment of a lot of these on-site damages or even site construction sites. Here's an example for auto-turn software that we do have right now in place. It's about, again, connecting the dots, doing a QA/QC reviews on designs. How do we communicate this QA/QC visually to a non-CAD user? With that, I think this morning one of the focus was paper isn't going anywhere. If you see here, this was a project, Winston-Salem project. We deal with a lot of different, departments and agencies across outside of NCDOT, and not everybody is ready for digital or data. Some of these agencies may be paper heavy, and so for that, we got to keep that in mind as we move forward. How do we accommodate these external agencies that are still catching up on it versus the other ones that are already caught up with data? End of the day, my point is think it from your own department's place you work. I think one of the questions I always say, for digital delivery is, what's in it for me, and why should I change? And end of the day, I think the answer should be, right now my process is paper or data, and how is that data being cycled through the process so that the next person that gets this deliverable can use this data for his work, and then it cycles back to me later on. So with that, I want to have Andrew demo some of the current technologies that we have, just so we see what's coming up in the near future.
All right, apologize, guys. Round two on this. I pre-recorded these videos intending to do a voiceover, and now in hindsight, I should have just let you guys listen to me in-house talk for about 10 minutes here. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the tools, just showing a brief demonstration of more of this in action. What you're seeing now is kind of the web-based interface. So again, it's more than just the 3D model. It's the actual data behind the scenes. So by leveraging the tool that you'll be seeing throughout the next 10 minutes is Infrastructure Cloud, you now have access anywhere to that ProjectWise data. So whereas before, big hurdle to entry was ProjectWise environment, not super user-friendly for most folks, you're able to get in, use it kind of like a OneDrive or a SharePoint. So we're seeing a lot of opportunities here with the technology to make things more accessible, more cloud-based. Again, just showing a little bit of the example of what you can do with the tools. You're also now talking about integrated workflows. So you're now using the model as a foundation for comments. We're actually piloting this now with FDOT, using this as their official comment response mechanism for both 2D plans as well as 3D models. You also have the ability to manage your deliverables. So again, just some tools that are built in the ecosystem. We're really looking to streamline the process. I know we have a lot of SharePoint workflows internally, but really what we're trying to do is dashboard this data. So the more data we have, the more we're able to interface and integrate it, the more information we can glean from that system. Jumping to the model review, a few things. Again, this is kind of the similar model we showed this morning. Rather than saying the same spiel I gave this morning, I do want to say that we have been working with Vaseem and his team, the Account Integration Group, on doing trainings to the divisions. We actually have this training formally posted for model review. I believe that's public, or if you're in NCDOT, you have access to it. Correct? So if you're in the department, we have about an hour and a half training on Infrastructure Cloud already available. You can search for it within the system. If not, reach out. We can give you some links for it. But we really felt passionate about showing that this is a tool that's available and accessible today. We wanted to stress and emphasize this isn't a future project. We didn't pull something and put it together specifically for this training. We just pulled an example of a project, this one from Division 11, as is, and you're able to, again, just by using the tools that we're already using ProjectWise and Open Roads, we're able to funnel into a system and pipeline where everyone can jump in and access this information. I always like to joke, if you have not OpenCAD in 6 months, this is a tool for you. This is definitely, when someone asks me, how are we training older folks in ORD, say more senior folks in ORD, I say we don't. It's just, at this point, the way technology is going, it does not make sense for everyone to learn Open Roads. I think it's going to have its time and its place. If you're signing and sealing 3D deliverables, sure, you want to be in the design software. But for the vast majority of folks out there, project managers, owners, this tool is not only sufficient, it actually excels way beyond the native program. This actually funnels to construction. Unfortunately, we didn't get to incorporate the construction asset pipeline, but this actually incorporates to the project schedule, and you can feed that in and get a 4D model showing the timeline of the project as well. Where I cut off this morning, this video will continue on a little bit. Again, just showing how easy it is to pull things like elevations to QC, super elevations and things like that. This is just a brief introduction. There's probably about 2-3 hours worth of content to really dive into for the training. But I know for our folks, the interdisciplinary coordination is really huge. Being able to jump in here and say, hey, are my invert elevations correct? Are my grates at the right elevation? And being able to see visually in that model, it's a one-to-one match, saves you plenty of time. We've done a few QCs where things stand out and jumps out at you. That's the kind of stuff we love catching, is you're not even looking for it. You're just casually glancing over the model and you're catching design issues before you're actually entering a QC environment. One thing we did do with this project, there wasn't a 3D bridge model. If you're structures folks in the room, you're like, hey, we're not modeling bridges yet. Not yet, but we're getting there. Same thing with those end rolls. You don't see end rolls modeled on every project or on the spill-through abutments. That was one thing that we really appreciate as part of this opportunity to see how we can benefit from some of the additional collaboration opportunities. What you're about to see here is just another quick example. Project is straight line, not as exciting as a few other examples I've on other projects, but simple, just quality of life things of, hey, what does this corridor look like to drive? And now all of a sudden doing 3D signing is a consideration. Don't need to worry about the sight distance to those overhead signs and guidelines. You can get a feel for design speeds. You can do a high-level stopping sight distance. And these tools are developing and updating monthly. So you're seeing now this was just a quick and dirty sight distance analysis, but you can actually run a full 3D stopping sight distance study in the application without even touching a CAD file. And that's something that's pretty new. That's not something we were able to do a year ago, and we're excited to see where this tool continues to develop for the future. One thing I also do want to point out as I'm going through here is the ability to quickly see and push forward changes. So by seeing this, we see a conflict between a roadway and a hydro model. This was actually a real conflict, so I'm not sure if anyone's from the division and wants to talk about it. I'm sure it was resolved in the plan set. But this is what happens between the 50-foot cross sections. So it's things that your cross sections may look fine, but there's some consideration in between of what's exactly happening with that ditch line. You're able to quickly see, identify the conflict, do a comment, and then this comment will get tracked and potentially emailed to the people. I know I kind of turn those email notifications off. It gets a little overwhelming. But if I want to send it to Vaseem, I can select his name from a list and quickly just get that tracked and processed. Not only does it kind of save time in writing an email, it actually gives you that one single source of truth so that all comments on a project have the potential, again, not saying we're switching to this overnight, but have the potential to be tracked and dashboarded as part of a comprehensive review, and then exported as a PDF at the end of the day for document control and tracking. But it's tools like this that are enabling us to get more information in the model. If you ask me, 2 years ago, what's ORD good for? I'd say it's got some good modeling tools and workflows, but it's not really in the hands of the average user. This and other applications like it is what's opening the door for us to really leverage the tools, and we're really excited to see how this corresponds with construction as well as asset management, being able to take this information, funnel it down that workflow pipeline. Again, just showing you what that looks like. You have the ability to comment, so you can track correspondence regarding to one issue, and then you're able to save it and export it at the end of the day, attach files, attach standards. Imagine you have a younger group with you. You could, link them to the appropriate standards within the design documentation guidance and go from there. All right, another example, this is a separate project, talking about digital delivery initiatives. So this is one of the ones that they actually did a construction demo with Trimble. I think we had some content about that, but we removed it since. But similar thing, you're able to emulate other workflows. So one thing I like about this is if you're used to reviewing in CAD, you can do that too. If you're used to KMZ output files, you basically have a KMZ file that's going to update on you daily. This is integrated with your project. It tracks live. You can control how often the cloud infrastructure gets updated. And then you're quickly able to analyze. In this case, it was match existing, so there's not really a proposed profile. But you can extract that 3D information from a KMZ-like environment. A lot of folks are used to using KMZs. We call these KMZ pluses internally, just as a way to get folks more familiar and more comfortable with the data. What's nice about that is right from the KMZ view, you're able to kind of switch around and jump around per discipline, toggle things on and off, hoping that these get automated a little bit more in the future, but you can set up views and workflows so that your average user isn't spending time monkeying in the settings in order to get something out the door for a review process. And similar thing, you're able to get in and especially for interdisciplinary, do a quick review. We have most of our internal drainage folks prefer this to traditional plan review. And again, it's putting emphasis on QC and quality control of the design before going to plans production. So if we can get our design refined before going to plans, we actually save a lot of time in the back end. And that's where you're going to start seeing some benefits of this technology is the reduction in the duplication of efforts. Imagine you hit play on plans and it's good to go. Probably not, but at least it'll be a true plan QC and you're not actually QCing the design. This is one of my favorite examples. I don't think Brian is in the room. At least I haven't laid eyes on him yet. There he is. This is a couple years ago now for Division 14. This is one of the first photogrammetry infrastructure cloud environments we've done. And just showing how cool it is to be able to jump in and actually walk the project site and have that ability to do so from a web browser. Again, no software needed to install. We're doing workflows we're already doing today. We didn't really have to go out there and refly the site. And since then, our final survey groups have been just continuing to improve the quality of those photogrammetry models, and being able to integrate that from the design perspective is huge. I have a few other examples of that I'm happy to share, but for this, that was just a quick and dirty one. This is the only one. All those examples so far were in-state projects that were already underway. This one I'm bumping down to a neighbor down south just to show one of our more integrated models with Models as Legal Document. Really just showing that you have the added benefits of having all your disciplines integrated and involved. So you have hydro, you've got ITS, you've got lighting, you've got all these groups working together in one comprehensive environment. And you're able to easily just open up a cross-section, view any information you want from that model. If you want to see what that light pole is doing, what elevation needs to be, you don't have to wait till that plan section gets cut or look at the nearest cross-section and interpolate stations. It's all available to you, just a few clicks of the button. And really excited about the future, being able to take that and really have all these disciplines from a pre-construction side commenting on this. Now this does go into construction. There is an offering that takes this exact same model and puts it into Synchro, which is the construction equivalent of it. To be honest, I think it has a little bit of way to come. I think as we know, there's a lot of applications out there. The whole idea though is once you have the small information, you're able to export that into whichever format the entity prefers. So if you're a Trimble shop, you can do Trimble. If you're an AutoCAD shop, you can do Civil 3D. But all this information is going through IFC. I don't want to get too technical with this general session, but basically think of it as IFC format as the PDF of modeling, where you're able to take all this small information, export it at the end of the day, and send it on its way. Just a few quick tools, things like vertical clearance checks, utility, clash detection. I could spend an hour or two up here talking to you about it, but really just wanted to show you and kind of wet your whistle for what's to come with some of our model review workflows. This is something we're looking to roll out. I think I would be remiss if I could say that we are looking for volunteers to help pilot some of the efforts internal to NCDOT. So if you have any projects that are top of mind when you're seeing these tools, happy to reach out. Vaseem, Jennifer, and I can get you guys going in the right direction. So with that, I think we got about 15 minutes for questions, and I will step away so you guys don't have to hear my voice anymore. I guess Matt or Jennifer, who wants to facilitate? Oh, sounds like Lily, you're volunteering. Yeah, Lily, come on. We'll sit up here.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Does this detach? There you go.
You know, I got something to say. Giles, I'm gonna ask you a question about this. So, you know, the way we used to do it was we're going to go out here and improve this existing road. Well, what's out there? Well, let's go up into the division office on the second floor into that end room where the plan room is, where all the plans in there since the 1930s, and let's see if we can find a set of plans that was on that road and what do we do to it then and what are we going to do to it now. So I'd like for you to speak a little bit to it. And it was mentioned this morning about data loss. Data loss going from here to here, and from pre-construction to construction, data loss from construction to maintenance, and so forth and so on. And one example that comes to my mind immediately is when we worked on the stuff on I-95 down in Division 6, widening from 4 lanes to 8 lanes, okay? So now in the 8 lanes, the crown point is about the inside, is about the middle of the 2 inside lanes, and then so the inside lane breaks toward the median. The next lane breaks out toward the shoulder. The next lane has instead of a 02, it's a 025, and then the last lane's brakes on an 03. Now, whether it got built like that or not, I don't know. But the point being, and we've had this conversation, is when you get ready to resurface that in the future, how are you going to know that because of hydroplaning issues, we put those brakes in there? How are you going to know that in the future, as an example? And will this information help the end user, the maintenance crowd, know what needs to happen to reestablish what was out there? And that's just an example of data retained, perhaps in a model. And so I just want you to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. When it comes to super elevation and things like that, we're not necessarily always tracking that. But if that corresponding data is something that we can put into our pavement management system, if we have that additional data and there's additional pieces of information like that we can add to it because we're getting a digital product, that's something we certainly can add in there. Because long term, I mean that would be huge for whenever somebody's developing a resurfacing project, if they know what those, if we were trying to get away from the standard 02 and go to a 025 or something like that, if we knew that piece of information as we're developing those typicals that are going to go into the resurfacing package, then we can certainly incorporate that in and have the folks that are developing those projects go and know that information's there and can pull it into their project that they're developing. So I think if there's ways that we can add that information to the data sets we already have, yes, we'll take it and utilize it. Another thing, not just the pavement structure that we're talking about there. I think about pipes and other drainage networks that we have out there. We're going out trying to capture that usually manually out in the field on a regular basis, and as we're checking and assessing the condition of our drainage networks out there, if we can just add that data set where from the as-built where it was constructed, where we got the inlet and outlet elevations and what size the pipe was and any other parameters, whether it has a head wall. There's so many things that we can capture from the digital model that we can just plug straight into our inventory. Now, I'm really excited about opportunities like that as well. But yeah, that was a great question, Jerry. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
I have more of a comment. I don't know if it's a question, and I guess it points toward the integration piece. I think I heard Jennifer mention in most. Jennifer wins the prize for saying that buzzword the most during her talk. But yeah, integration. I see challenges if this is more of a consultant-produced deliverable at the division level rather than an equally robust internal effort. The more folks at division in pre-construction and construction who are comfortable tapping into this and pulling up, toggling the different layers, to see for their discipline, mines, utilities. I think that's equally important. And again, I go back to if it's more of a consultant-led effort that's producing the deliverable that's out there, I think less people are going to, at the division level, are going to be able to see it or use it. So again, more of a comment than a question, but I think, you know, there has to be, you know, the internal users at division, as opposed to the consultants, need to be able to utilize this model. And some thought, you know, I'd say that a lot of emphasis should be put toward that.
I mean, I wanted to add on that that integration piece there. I think that's a valid point. You know, I think we used to do a lot of that internal deliverables back then, and things have changed over time, where a lot more of our work has been coming out from the consultant sites. But I see this whole digital delivery as being probably almost about two or three different phases. This first phase is probably going to be just connecting our systems together, you know, the whole data flow, making sure, because right now we're struggling on a lot of our softwares, hardware, and also all of a sudden our workflow is changing with those softwares and hardware. And so I think the first wave is where we figure out our workflows with these data integration, and then the second is going to be how do we add that finishing touch to our workflows. That's where I feel a lot of that training, internal training, will help, and also over time, lessons learned from these projects on how do we finish this workflow in a lot more smoother, internal, focused areas. So I feel like initially I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions on is it really going to be working for us or not, because a lot of this is new for everyone involved. I mean, a lot of other DOTs are in the same boat. And if you ask them, they all have their own different processes, simply because every DOT is a little bit different, you know. And so they're figuring out as they go on this, getting mileage on these models, getting mileage on how the data is being integrated and used over time. So, and it's going to be digital delivery, I think it's going to be an ongoing enhancement over time for the next decade or so, I think.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up for that. Data for data's sake isn't great, right? That is only useful if someone's actually using it. So I think an important piece of this conversation as we go through is to make sure that division staff, those who would benefit from it, understand and can know how to interface with the information we're providing. So training, important there, but as well as just general awareness and making sure we're all partnered as part of that journey.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, if that's all, then I will go ahead and put the PDH up on the screen. And next is going to be lunch at 11:30 in room 1.